Next on Currents News, the United States is becoming deeply involved in the flaring Venezuela crisis. The latest on what's happening in Washington, Venezuela, and at the Pentagon.
Who else has a story like mine?
The words of an abortion survivor addressing the Summit for Life in Queens as leaders get ready for a massive pro-life rally in Times Square. The Pope is hours away from a new foreign mission, where he's going and what he hopes to accomplish. Plus, a terrorist who admitted he wanted to blow up New York City subways will soon walk away a free man. The news starts right now. The crisis in Venezuela is getting worse. More people are being killed, and the world's superpowers are going nose to nose. Good evening, I'm Michelle Powers. Liz Faublas is off. President Trump and Vladimir Putin on the hotline for more than an hour today because of Venezuela. At the Pentagon, an emergency crisis meeting involved the national security team and top generals. Emily Schmidt has the very latest on this fast-breaking story.
For the first time in months, President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin talked by phone Friday.
I had a very good talk with President Putin, probably over an hour, and we talked about many things. Venezuela was one of the topics. We want to get some humanitarian aid. Right now, people are starving. They have no water, they have no food.
The United Nations Human Rights Office says at least 5 people died in protests this week as embattled President Nicolas Maduro faces an uprising led by opposition leader Juan Guaido.
It is their overarching duty to ensure the protection of the people of Venezuela.
The Venezuelan power struggle is causing tensions between Washington and Moscow. The Kremlin supports Maduro, while the White House recognizes Guaido as the interim president.
This is our hemisphere. It's not where the Russians ought to be interfering.
After a Friday meeting of the president's national security team at the Pentagon, Acting Secretary of Defense Patrick Shanahan said off camera the team is looking at options for U.S. intervention in Venezuela. When asked could that include naval deployment, he answered all options are comprehensive, but there is a lot of water nearby. Meanwhile, opposition leader Juan Guaido says there will be more protests Saturday and that they will continue to grow peacefully. In Washington, Emily Schmidt, Currents News.
The spiraling violence in Venezuela is now targeting the paramedics who are helping people on the streets of Caracas. Several Blue Cross workers have been wounded by Maduro regime troops. According to one paramedic, the soldiers knew who they were shooting at.
We identify ourselves in several forms. We have flags on each one of our motorcycles and vehicles identifying we are the Blue Cross. We have a white helmet with the Blue Cross. We also wear full uniforms.
So far, Venezuela's defense minister has refused to respond to the accusations. Leaders who are fighting to save the lives of unborn children are gearing up for a massive Times Square demonstration, but they're running into fierce opposition in getting their message out. Currents News' Emily Druby reports.
This weekend, thousands of people are expected to be in Times Square for the historic pro-life event, Alive from New York. It's bringing a voice for the voiceless to the abortion capital of America, a state which sees 239 children killed by the deadly procedure every day. But the organizers are facing strong opposition. Their leader says several companies refuse to lease them billboards on which they plan to show an ultrasound of a baby in the womb. Undeterred, rally participants are bringing their own digital billboards to the crossroads of the world. They're also going to be speaking out loudly.
This is the biggest pro-life weekend in New York City history, and we wanted to be a part of it by bringing in top-name pro-life speakers to Queens.
Chris Slattery is talking about the Summit for Life, 2 days in Queens, getting ready for the Times Square demonstration.
I've been affected by abortion in a very unique way.
One of the most powerful speakers that the Queens group heard was Claire CULWELL. CULWELL is adopted. The first time she met her birth mother, she brought along some greeting cards.
She opened the cards and she read the words, "Thank you for choosing life for me." And I watched as her happy tears turned quickly, instantly, into really sad tears.
At the time, CULWELL didn't know her mother had not chosen life.
My birth mother had a D&E dismemberment, late-term abortion at 20 weeks. And they told her that day that her life would go back to normal, but It never did. In fact, a few weeks later, she went back to that doctor and they told her that the abortion had been successful, but that it had only been successful on one baby because she had actually been pregnant with twins.
The doctors missed Claire's little body because they didn't perform an ultrasound examination. CULWELL says it's important to share her story because the sanctity of life is so important. Other speakers will do the same in Times Square on Saturday, all of them speaking out for the unborn who don't yet have the ability to speak for themselves. In Astoria, Emily Druby, Currents News.
Hate crimes are skyrocketing in New York City. The latest from the NYPD shows a 67% increase in all types of bias crimes. There's been an 82% surge in anti-Semitic violations. The totals are for this year so far and compare with the same period a year ago. The police report the anti-Jewish incidents represent more than half of all hate crimes. A terrorist who targeted New York City subways for destruction 10 years ago will soon go free. He's getting out of jail for something he did while in custody. Miguel Marquez has that report.
The terrorist who plotted to blow up New York City's subway system nearly 10 years ago set to be free in just days after prosecutors cited his, quote, extraordinary cooperation with U.S. investigators that led to terrorism charges against numerous individuals. At the sentencing, the judge praising Najibullah Zazi's 10-year transformation. Zazi had hatched his plan after meeting with al-Qaeda leaders in Pakistan. Investigators say he then planned the suicide bombing with two others on the anniversary of the September 11th attacks in 2009. But authorities had been surveilling them for months and followed Zazi on his way from Colorado to New York, foiling the plot and arresting them. Zazi pleaded guilty to terrorism charges in 2010 and faced life in prison, but he earned a lighter sentence after cooperating with the government, meeting with them more than 100 times. Prosecutors say he provided critical intelligence and unique insight regarding al-Qaeda and its members, adding he cooperated at great personal cost to himself and his family, and his help came in the face of substantial potential danger. Speaking to the judge, Zazi denounced his past radical Islamic views, saying, "I am not the same person. I find it almost hard to imagine what I was involved in 2008 and 2009. The judge telling Zazi this once unthinkable second chance has come your way and you earned it. His attorney agrees.
I've witnessed that transformation over the past approximate 10 years. The reality is that the light at the end of the tunnel is extremely bright for him.
The judge said Zazi's help to the government was unprecedented for an admitted terrorist. In a few hours, Pope Francis will be airborne once again. He's traveling to countries where there are not a lot of Catholics, but the Holy Father is taking a big agenda with him. Melissa BUTZ is standing by in Rome with more.
This Sunday, Pope Francis won't be praying the Regina Coeli from St. Peter's Square, as he'll just be beginning his 3-day trip to the Balkan countries of Bulgaria and North Macedonia. Pope Francis's 29th trip of his pontificate will take place May 5th through the 7th. He is the first bishop of Rome to visit North Macedonia and second to visit Bulgaria after Pope John Paul II visited in 2002. As such, one purpose of the visit is to improve relations with the Orthodox churches, yet they have their own internal conflicts. For example, Bulgaria's Orthodox community refused to participate in the September 2016 Orthodox Catholic Dialogue or in the Pan-Orthodox Council this past March. Meanwhile, Macedonia's Orthodox community has separated themselves from the others and is no longer recognized. Another issue on the table is migration. Countless refugees coming from the Middle East and Africa have recently caused tensions in these areas where Christians, Muslims, and Jews were previously living in peace. While there, Pope Francis will visit a refugee camp and also participate in an interreligious act for peace. He will also pray before the throne of Cyril and Methodius, patrons of Europe. The Pope believes Pope St. John XXIII, who was an apostolic visitor in Bulgaria, and St. Mother Teresa, who was born in North Macedonia, will especially intercede for him on the trip. In her honor, he will pray before the memorial of Mother Teresa and visit with the poor on Tuesday before returning to Rome. Through the Pope's expected speeches tackling ecumenism and migration, the Pope is also sending a political message to both of these countries, which once suffered under communist rule. At the Vatican, Melissa BUTZ, Current News.
The Holy Father has also expressed interest in going home to Argentina. During a meeting with Argentinian bishops at the Vatican, Francis said he would love to make a homecoming, even as soon as 2020. But the challenge is his already packed agenda. Since becoming the Bishop of Rome, he has yet to return home. Could Francis be speaking to President Trump? That's what some Vatican experts are wondering tonight after the Pope again attacked the idea of building border walls. The Holy Father linked walls with too much nationalism, something he's labeling as a deviation.
Quando verte in esclusione e odio altrui, quando diventa nazionalismo conflittuale che alza muri, anzi addirittura razzismo o antisemitismo.
He invited world leaders to welcome, protect, promote, and integrate immigrants into society. A border bill being proposed in Washington aims at dealing with the flood of migrants trying to get into the United States. The measure is a bipartisan push. It's being called the Humane Act and focuses on the humanitarian needs of the people crossing the border. The legislation would keep families together, provides for more Homeland Security personnel, and creates more processing centers where needed. The bill also improves care for migrant children. There's a lot more news headed your way. A wild and powerful storm is causing havoc and mass evacuations. It's a cyclone and it's tearing through India. The videos are striking. New terror threats and what's happening to churches in Sri Lanka. Bishop DiMarzio will join us to discuss the Easter Sunday bombings. And disturbing video of a baby dropped on its head in the delivery room. Thankfully, the newborn is okay. We'll hear from the parents. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. An update tonight on terror threats against Catholics in Sri Lanka. The churches will stay closed this Sunday. Cardinal Malcolm Ranjith making the announcement one day after he said masses would resume. The cardinal is reporting that he received information from, quote, reliable sources abroad of possible new attacks this weekend against a famous Catholic church and a school. The leader of the Archdiocese of Colombo says he'll keep schools and churches closed until he receives further news. The Easter Sunday bombings are the latest examples of the growing plague of Christian persecution worldwide. Tonight, Bishop DiMarzio is with Ed Wilkinson to talk about people dying for their religious beliefs. Ed.
Thank you, Michelle. And today we're going to talk with Bishop DiMarzio about some recent headlines and the idea of Christian and Jewish persecution in the world today. So, Bishop, on Easter Sunday we had this incident in Sri Lanka. Do you see these as isolated incidents of crazy people, or are these really a system, a pattern of Christian Judaic persecution going on today?
Well, I think it's isolated acts. I don't think this is obviously a plot by one religion against another. I just earlier today spoke with Rabbi Schneier of the Park East Synagogue, and they had an event last week. Unfortunately, I couldn't get there. It was Monday, where they had the head of the World Islamic League, which is centered in Saudi Arabia, came to New York, was in the synagogue. They had children from Islamic school, children from a Jewish school. They had the ambassador from Sri Lanka, the ambassador from New Zealand, together signing a document of peace. Let's make sure that houses of worship are not targets of any kind of revenge. So it's again, everybody was affected by this. In New Zealand, you had the mosque and the synagogue, the churches in Sri Lanka. It's just incredible that houses of worship become a point of hatred, where they are supposed to be places of peace. So I don't think I think that they are isolated incidents. It's just unfortunate that the world sees this a way of revenge.
Yeah, religious leaders can sign these pacts, but how do we get that to filter down to the grassroots? You have some fringe groups within some of these.
That's why it's so difficult to get them in line, but at least people who are responsible are standing their ground and saying this is not the way we should act. We have to act differently.
Mm-hmm.
But unless leadership takes a stand, it's hard to other people who are not in leadership to follow. So that's you have to hope that the stand of leadership will make a difference.
In New York City, we go on alert whenever something like this happens around the world. Do you worry about our own churches here in Brooklyn and Queens?
I do. Certainly, we have a worry about this could happen any place, and we've had the police, as you know, speak to our pastors, the anti-terrorism group, to give them ideas of how to protect themselves. We probably need to do more in our churches with cameras and other ways that will protect the people, will be a deterrent for people to use these sites as a place of violence. So there's more to be done.
Yeah. Years ago, you would never think of a church or a synagogue or a mosque being a place that's going to be attacked. And it seems like we've lost the sense of the sacred these days. There's a lack of respect for religion almost. Do you feel that's becoming more prevalent?
Well, it's true. Sometimes it's people of religion who make this jump, and sometimes it's people who are deranged. So it's hard to say, where's it coming from? But at one time, I think churches, as synagogues and mosques, would be sacred ground, sacred place where violence had no part. Unfortunately, today that's changed.
Because immediately politicians will start talking about gun control, and they're saying this is a gun control issue. Do you think that the answer is in political issues like that, or is this a mental health problem with some people? What do you think is at the root cause?
I don't think there's any political solution to that problem. It's a much deeper problem of religion and of mental health at a certain point. Some of these people are deranged. There's no other. They don't represent religion. They're just individuals who are deranged that get a hold of guns, which is another problem. But gun control is important because there are two available. It may make it more difficult for people to get guns, and we'll have less violence.
Do you feel as a religious leader that the voice of the church has been diminished a bit in society, and that there is a lack of respect for organized religion these days?
Well, there could be. Again, if you look at religion as institutional presence, that's a diminished presence perhaps, but the church is not just the institution, it's people. And our people have to make their place known in society with the values that they live by. That's what's most important. It's not as important that the church has a say, but everybody who believes should have a say.
Good. Bishop, thanks for spending some time with us today. Okay. And Michelle, we're coming back to you.
Thank you, Ed and Bishop DiMarzio. Our continued prayers for the victims of the bombings and their families. India's strongest cyclone in 20 years is tearing through the eastern part of the country. This crane collapse was caught on camera from the nation's Odisha state in the eastern part of the country on the Bay of Bengal. The cyclone is producing winds up to 150 miles per hour. The winds blew out these windows of a university building. 7 people have been killed in the storm so far by falling trees and collapsed walls. Over 1 million others have been evacuated from just one Indian state alone. The last storm this powerful to strike India killed 10,000 people in 1999. A cruise ship belonging to the Church of Scientology was quarantined in St. Lucia for a confirmed case of the measles. A female crew member aboard the vessel has tested positive for the illness and was likely exposing it to others. There are approximately 300 people on board. The ship's doctor has requested 100 doses of the measles vaccine. The Church of Scientology has yet to comment. A baby in Arizona was dropped on her head just seconds after she was born. The child is okay. The parent shared a video of the incident. They want an apology and answers from the hospital. A warning to our viewers, the video is graphic and may be disturbing.
This is Madison, and then that's Morgan.
Derek and Monique Rogers are like any parents with twins.
They keep us up at night.
Yeah. But since their little angel's premature births,
February 14th, Valentine's Day,
one thing has bothered them more than the lack of sleep. The video you are about to see is graphic, showing 3-pound, 4-ounce Morgan falling from a hospital employee's hand onto a table. Dad Derek was recording.
It made me so mad, like I had to stop recording.
He later confronted the doctor.
I told him, I said, you dropped my baby. He had a nonchalant look on his face, and I showed him the video, and he had nothing to say after that.
An ultrasound a week later revealed Morgan had a small hemorrhage. A former NICU nurse says those are common in premature babies and won't lead to any long-term effects.
She does this tensing up and her body kind of shakes.
That shaking, though, has Mom and Dad questioning things.
I would like to know if this was due to her being, having a low birth weight, or if it was due to her being dropped on her hip.
They're hopeful their daughter will grow up healthy and happy, but want the hospital staff to be more careful and learn from this mistake. The hospital said in a statement that they can't comment on the specifics of the incident due to patient privacy laws, but they said they are investigating. Still to come on Currents News, an award for the dad of one of our own. He was a hero cop. And a hard assignment for the tablet, choosing the very best of this year's Easter art contest. And the tablet has a brand new page called Our Diocesan Family, where you can share pictures of recent baptisms, Holy Communions, confirmations, marriage, all of the joyous sacraments. For more details and to submit your photos, go to thetablet.org/ourdiocesanfamily. Your picture may be published in an upcoming issue of the newspaper. We'll be right back. A big meeting at the Vatican. The heads of some 450,000 women religious around the world. The summit, set to take place next week, will present religious life from countless angles. One topic the leaders are already interested in is the future of women in the church.
For example, the issue of women deacons was raised 3 years ago with the Pope, who set up a commission, and he may speak in the future about the results of the work of that commission. We haven't a particular position, right, if I might put it that way. We're not arguing for something, but we're searching together.
The nuns also say they do believe the Holy Father is searching for stronger roles for women in the church. A fallen hero is being remembered in New York for his work in bringing down organized crime. Detective Doug Levian posthumously received the Jack and Helen Como Award for his work in going undercover to stop mafia crime in New York City. His son, Vincent Levian, was also honored. Vincent works as the Director of External Affairs at Net TV's parent company, DeSales Media Group. He is also the member of many philanthropic organizations. Finally tonight, a tough task for the tablet team. Today, they were selecting the winners of this year's Tablet Easter Art Contest. More than 500 great pieces of art were submitted, highlighting the theme, Christ is Risen. The artists range from the first grade through high school. The very best will be honored at an award ceremony on May 15th at the Knights of Columbus Archbishop John Hughes Council in Brooklyn. The tablet needs your support to ensure that Catholic journalism will thrive well into the future. You can do so by subscribing to the tablet so that it comes right to your mailbox. You'll save up to 55% by having it delivered to your home versus paying for it at church. Go to the website, thetablet.org/home55, or call 877-883-8356. That is Currents News. I'm Michelle Powers. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.